Hey everybody, Jason Shadrick here with PremiumGuitar.com, and we're here with JY's tech Greg, and he's going to walk us through the guitars and amps and effects and everything that he's bringing out on the road. So let's start here with one of his guitars.
Yeah, why don't we start off with JY for years has used Fender Strats. I mean, basically, all he uses is Fender Strats with just subtle differences. This one is probably one of his favorites right now. He's got his old 65, but we decided to keep that at home because of what it is.
It just makes you nervous having that thing on the road.
Yeah, it sure does. It sure does. So this one, like all the JY Strats, they'll all have Fernandez sustainer units in them because we run on in-ear monitors with no speaker cabinets going through Palmer speaker simulators. At the flick of a switch, he's got feedback. Or if he puts it in a different mode, you got infinite sustain. So it really doesn't affect us that he doesn't have speaker cabinets on stage.
Was that a new addition that went along with the decision to take the speaker cabs off the stage, or?
Actually, we had speaker cabinets for quite a while before we did that, but it also, even with the speaker cabinets, it gave him the ability, doesn't matter where you are on the stage, in proximity to your rig, you need feedback now in a guitar solo or just infinite sustain, and there it is. I mean, dating back to his old blue Kramer that he used to have that had a different system, but a similar type of system called a Sustainiac. But then we went to these sustainers, and they've just worked fantastic for us. Other than that, the only difference between this and most Strats is he really loves a Floyd Rose, as do I. And so all the Strats have, standard Floyd Rose trims, but we've upgraded the parts with stainless steel cap screws, and you have the titanium blocks inside the saddles, which are great because they don't oxidize and get jammed up as much. Sometimes you'd have to pry them loose, changing strings. This one doesn't have an open back, but I'll show you on the other ones. You got big blocks, either titanium or brass, for the trem block, and it just makes for a fantastic Strat.
And how much is that kind of his main guitar? Does he use that for most of the night, or how does he switch between the?
It varies because we've been adding recently. With the help of our friends at FU Upgrades and Boogie Bodies, we've decided to go ahead and make some Strats of our own just to experiment. As I ding the top of this one, but we've done some fun things. We just wanted to have fun with it. We decided to try and duplicate the shape of JY's 65 Strat neck because, as we all know, every neck can be a little bit different. Same manufacturer, same year, sometimes you just get a different shape in the neck. So with this, we have a CNC program now that can cut out that shape of neck, and we can experiment with different woods. This one is bird's eye maple, and the thing is bird's eye maple throughout. You have the neck and the fretboard being that cooked bird's eye maple, which you can see the beautiful figuring. And lots of times the stage can be dark in different areas, so we have glow in the dark dots on there. And the side markers are a little bit larger than most, so in those low light situations you can really see what you're doing. And for aesthetics, we have a matching headstock with the JY script, and again, Perloid to match the Perloid pickguard.
And Seymour Duncan humbucker?
Yeah, and this, we just tried to, again, take it, kick things up a notch and add the Seymour Duncan custom pickup. So it's, a Seymour Duncan custom model.
And what gauge strings does he use on his guitars?
I'm glad you asked because I wasn't really thinking about it. He does use very light gauge of strings. He uses an 8 through a 38, which, some people are kind of stunned by, but it really doesn't seem to affect the amount of tone he gets between the rig, the guitars, and the sustainer.
Not quite Billy Gibbons light, but pretty light.
Pretty darn light, yeah. And knock on wood, I haven't had many difficulties. Of course, I change them, pretty much every show. So, and then we have another that's a similar upgraded model that we did with the Boogie Bodies folks, Adam Reaver. Mike Learn is our paint guy. He's based in Colorado, and Mike Learn has finished both of these guitars for us, and he does great work with the Sparkle Candy Apple Red. Again, we went with the Perloid pickguard, the Duncan Custom. This one you can see in the back. the titanium block and the Floyd Rose.
And this is the same setup on all the other ones, right?
Yes, exactly. Although we have tried the big brass blocks as well. So, you know, it just depends on the guitar. Every once in a while I'll get one with a titanium block and think, it sounds a little this or that, and I'll try a brass one. If it sounds good, we'll go with it. And of course, the trem stop in there, JY kind of can have a heavy hand on the bridge. So as to not knock it out of tune, we use the trem stop. And it makes it much more consistent for me, too, in terms of tuning and getting it up to speed when I'm stringing them. The trem stop is great. Right. Again, Cook Bird's Eye Maple, but on this one, pearloid binding around the neck. And we did some lowercase Greek letters for inlays. So, you know, you got gamma for G, alpha for A, beta for B. And we skipped the 9th fret and did a delta symbol at the 10th fret. Which I bet could really mess some people up when they're playing on stage. But so those, JY basically plays a bunch of Strats. There's one other in the dressing room that was made by Bill Nash. That's a blue Strat. Again, very similar to these. Just a very cool Shelby blue with a rosewood fretboard, standard dot inlays, white pickguard on that one. He'll be playing all of them tonight.
Are you guys tuned to standard for all your stuff?
Standard tuning, A440. There's no funky tunings or anything like that going on. It's pretty straightforward.
Excellent. Let's walk over here and take a look at his racks that he has going on. So tell us a little bit about once the guitar kind of the signal comes out. There's in-ear monitors and there's no cabinets on stage. Heads over here, and where does kind of the signal start?
So the signal starts at our Shure Wireless. Here's my switcher for JY's electrics. And basically, I'm just using 2 channels because the guitars are all very similar. I don't need a million channels of wireless. I can just switch straps back and forth with packs, channel 1, channel 2. From there, it goes out to the rack, and we have a Bradshaw switcher. So everything in the rack that I'm using is hooked into the loop switcher. And basically, it's just 2 different preamps. We have a Soldano preamp Series 2 SP77 for our dirty sound. And we got the Pierce right here for a clean sound, which I love the Pierce clean sound. It's very crystal clean, much like a JC 120. The SPX 90 we just have on a chorus program that just stays on that program. That's on no matter whether it's clean, dirty, or lead sound. And it just kind of makes it all stereo and thick chorus sounding. The TC 2290 is, again, just more stereo thickening, chorus-like stuff that is only engaged when we go to our clean sound. Okay. And then the H3000 has various programs for all 3 of the sounds. Just, again, there's nothing earth-shattering going on effects-wise. It's just stereo thickening, sweetening it up a little bit. Just subtle changes. We have the PCM 41 in there, which is not being used as a delay at all. It's basically a gain boost for our lead. Oh, okay. So it just gooses it up a little bit. The effects come back out of the Bradshaw into the Rocktron mixer, and then they feed out the output of that to our gate, which is a DBX 166 down here. And that's just being used as a gate. It's not being used for compression. And then out of the gate, it goes to our VHT power amp, which we used to use an older model that had KT88s in it. But we switched over to the one with EL34s, even though we run it pretty clean, to just give it a little bit more warmth, a little bit more of that standard rock guitar sound with the EL34 power tubes. And then from there, it goes out to our Palmer speaker simulators in stereo and off to Audio Land. And where we all get it fed into our in-ear monitors. And
you have in-ears as well, so you can monitor it?
Yes, I have in-ears as well because you can see the pedal board down here. We used to have one up on stage for JY that was hooked up through this. So either of us could switch things, but he got comfortable with me doing all the switching for him. And that's one less thing that I have to have up on stage. So I'm doing all the switching. Basically, it's Mr. Clean is our clean sound. Big Butt is our dirty sound. And goes to 11 is our lead sound. And we've had some weird things, depending if we have a new album or something that has a weird sound like a reverse reverb. Our reverse reverb was unbutt. And if I wanted to, I could go without effects and no butt. But basically, the 3 sounds are what we use. The pod in this rack is there just as an emergency backup, and that's what our bass player Ricky runs through He runs his guitar through when Chuck Panazzo, our original bass player, is playing bass on Fooling Yourself. Cool. Then the redundancy here is just a simplified version, very simplified version of the rig. It just comes out into the Soldano, then into the SPX for the chorus, stereo out to your power amp, and that's all, you know, because in case we have a problem with the pedal board memory freaking out, he can go to that without worries of all this external stuff going wrong, and you'll have something that sounds like your regular rig. And there you have it.
So even with all the knobs and buttons and switches, it's a pretty straight ahead rig, and 3 or 4 sounds, and that's pretty much it.
Ahead, but you know, even the pretty straight ahead, it can cause you nightmares sometimes. But knock on wood, we're pretty good.
So have you had any kind of bad situations where things have gone down in the middle of the show?
Oh yeah, I've had brownouts we were in Denver one time, and we just had a little drop in voltage, and next thing you know, I look at my pedal and the display looks like hieroglyphics on there, all sorts of different images on my display, and it's like, uh-oh, now what do we do? Hence going to a simplified version. We used to have more repetition in the rig where we could switch over to another Bradshaw and all this, but then we found, well, if that kind of thing goes down, I don't want all this memory, I don't want MIDI stuff, I just want to have something that works in a worst case scenario. So that's basically it for JY's rig.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about his rig.
Excellent.
And we're here today with Ricky and Ricky's tech Greg, who are going to walk us through what he's using on tour with Styx this summer. You're on tour with Ario and Ted Nugent.
And Ted Nugent.
So very loud, lots of guitars,
loud.
lots of cool stuff.
Starts off loud and gets louder.
That's right. So let's walk through the basses you brought out on the road here.
I designed this basically at a time when I was in bad English, and we were, with Jonathan Cain, a lot of the stuff is predominantly written keyboard heavy, and it works great with Styx as well because it's the same kind of a thing. I wanted to add, when a keyboard player goes down to a low B, C, D, I wanted to be able to go down there too, and with a 4-string, you're just not able to. Yeah. And I have a great collection of passive 4-strings from the 50s through the 60s, and I love them in other applications, but in a big band like this, arena rock bands, active basses just seem to cut better. So what I've done is I try to incorporate things from all the basses I like my 73 Rickenbacker, for example, had checkerboard binding. This is a little bit different kind of checkerboard that we used for this, and it's the neck through was really the original design, but this came out this way, and this bass, I wouldn't change it now. It's really great. But the F-hole, traditional F-hole, EMG active pickups, matching headstock I love matching headstock basses. Always did. I had some basses stolen, and Fender came to my aid, and they've always been really good to me. And all of a sudden, John Page gave the green light, who used to be at Fender, and we had this made, and it has become. I played this with Jimmy Page on the Coverdale Page record. This has been on a lot of different. It's all over the radio, and it's one of my main axes for that reason. And this company Italia. There are 4 countries actually involved in this. I'm trying to get the U.S. more involved, so I went with the EMG pickups. But the company is Italian. Their builder is in Korea. The guy who actually assembles all the work is in England, and the distributor is in Detroit. And so what I've done again is the checkerboard binding. The F-hole, I do want to change this to a more of a traditional F-hole. I want to bring this horn down a bit. But this is I'm going to play this tonight. It's an incredible sounding bass. This is probably one of the best sounding basses I've ever heard. It is a neck through. I was able to go through. This actually has something extra that the other one doesn't. And that is the neck through. And anybody who's played neck throughs and recorded with them, I don't exactly know why. There's all kinds of theories, but when the mix is done, you hear the bass, and you hear it clean and clear, even if it's a heavy-driven, guitar-driven band or song, and a lot of keyboards, vocals. It just seems to lay in the mix nicely. And the neck through just gives it some sort of I guess it's the mid-range tones that seem to sneak through, and it cuts. Again, this is the same EMG package that we have. Actually, I see that there's a little bit of a difference here in the electronics.
Let me see.
Dave probably knows better than I do.
I do.
But
You know what? I listened to this last. I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Hi. How you doing?
Hey.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, isn't it something?
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
I listened last night.
It's crazy.
Whoa.
Well,
when you're up here.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, it cuts.
Wow.
We were just talking about that. See?
Sorry, I didn't interrupt.
Another good transition by
that was
Dave Amato.
fantastic. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye. Bye. If you'll notice, there's glow tape, which Greg came up with. It was a great idea. I'll be starting in an arena setting where the lights are the place is black, and I can't see in the next. I've got to hit the 14th fret on whatever the G string, and I can't see, and it was hit or miss. When I first joined the band, I was like, oh man, here we go, please. And so Greg came up with the idea of putting glow tape on the neck, which I thought was genius, and that saved me from starting on the wrong note. And so what we did was we have the fret markers, the dotted fret markers on the side here that you can see on the ebony. Again, this is ebony. And then below that, directly below that, these are glow-in-the-dark dots. So that's actually built into the bass.
And what type of strings are you playing on these basses?
Here they are, elixirs. Elixirs do last longer. We do a lot of bass changes. We do a lot of shows, especially shows that are when it's in the summer and you're outside and playing the sheds and it's 103 degrees and you're just 3 songs into a set of rotosounds. Sorry, rotosound, but I kill them. And these last longer.
So how often do you change these strings? Every day or every show?
We change them now. We don't have to go every day.
Certain people have like a certain acidity to their sweat or whatever, and some guys can make strings last a long time. But with Ricky, just the way he sweats, whatever it is in his sweat, we used to use labella and rotosound, and literally one show, and they were completely dead. And so I was changing strings and going through them like crazy, and not only does it take up a lot of time, but it's just kind of a waste. And these, literally, we can put them on and have 4 or 5 shows. And the only reason why I change them is because the plastic coating, if you will, over them starts getting a little frayed where they pick. But if you pluck them, they're still bright as could be. But it just makes life a whole lot easier. But the 4-string, more vintage type bass, we still use a rotosound on that.
This one, Fender's always, as I said, been really good to me, and I had the idea of like the old soul bands from the 60s of Tommy and JY and I coming out with the same color guitars and basses, and we were going to do a series of them in different colors, and we started with a seafoam green, but it took so long, and Fender has other things to do than to appeal to all my little crazy ideas that I wake up in the early hours of the morning with. So they did send... Tommy has a baritone in the same color, and JY has a Strat. All of us come out in these seafoam. We play these on a song called One With Everything. And that's really the only use of these wonderful instruments. But when we do that song, we come out and we have that sort of all in one color. For a lot of the songs that are Lady, Too Much Time in My Hands, certain songs and some of the ballady, rounder tone. This guy right here, which is the P and the jazz pickups all in one. This is just a great sounding bass. I even did a little hip shot on the back of this, which we don't really use that much, but I can actually take this down from a low B down to an A, which is a little extreme. It's already a 5-string, but it was just an idea I had, and in application, I forget that I even have it up there, so I probably would be using it. But this is just a really good sounding bass. I have had a lot of bass players who like a little bit more. I like an edgy tone. My favorite bass in the world is a 1968 Tele bass through an SVT crank. But in this band, that'd be a little over the top because there's a lot going on with 2 guitars, plus keyboards, plus all the vocals that Styx that we do. So these rounder toned basses that are able to have a little fuller fundamental on the low end really work great. So this one does a lot of that. Bill Nash made me this. He actually didn't make me this bass, but he gave me this bass. He came one day and said, "I want you to have this," because he knew I loved 68 Teles. And this is his sort of knockoff of the 68 Teles. But I love this. Not only does it have the seafoam, or it's burgundy mist sort of color, but it has this binding. And I'm a huge lover of binding. All of my basses that I design have binding. And it's just a great I love to see the bass pop and stand out.
Seeing as we use a vintage style amp, we needed a little more flexibility, some different channels of sounds. Sometimes we want a little more dirt or whatever. So we got the Sansamp 3-channel preamp. And whenever we need a little something different, I can dial it in. As you can see, we have an open slot because we're always getting something new or trying a different song. And we can dial in a completely different sound. Very easy to do without completely modifying your rig.
Yeah, when you have passive and active basses that you're trying to introduce into a show and they have different outputs, it can, people can pull their hair out. So again, Greg came up with this idea to kind of compensate that level difference by using these pedals, and also I can get some cut and a little more edge out of them. So.
And finally, we have the Rickenbacker down there.
Yes, this is a 76. It's not. I was trying to find. I used to get frustrated with these things, and I almost want to break them over the stage because they just wouldn't stay in tune. And when I was playing 4 and 5 sets a night as a kid, I didn't realize that my checkerboard binding Rickenbacker was going to have value one day. And so I got so frustrated I got rid of it. And then, as we all do, we all try to replace the instruments that we used to have when we were kids. And so now I've got over 100 basses and guitars, just probably trying to get some of those back, and other things like, I wanted everything the Beatles had. I wanted everything that, John Entwistle had. And you go nuts. But this we use on the Great White Hope.
Correct.
When we're doing the 2-album tour. And it's, Rickenbacker has just that sound, and there's something about it that's special. And Chucky did record back in the day some of the early recordings with Styx. He one period he was using Rickenbackers and kind of gave me the idea to go back to it. And it's fun. I hope we keep doing more songs so I can introduce more basses with them. And then we have, speaking of Chuck, good transition, when Chuck comes out, because Chuck Panazzo, the original bass player for Styx, is still very much part of the Brotherhood, and he comes out, and I switch over to guitar. And I've played everything from I have a 63 Firebird, which has so much mojo, it's an insane guitar, but Greg said to me one night, he said, the way we pass off guitars, and if I ever, in the dark up there on the stage, and we have to do it really quick in between songs, if I ever broke that headstock off, and most of those that have that hockey stick headstock, and they do snap.
Very often.
I would love for you to retire this and bring something else out. So I had a few guitars that I brought out, and I was playing a 75 Tele for a while, and I had a Supro that was from the 50s. But the pickups were so microphonic, Gary said he could hear the crowd through my pickups louder than me playing it. So we got rid of that. And Natalia sent me this because I had the idea of playing a 6 and 12 and Fooling Yourself, which is when we first bring Chuck out on the stage. And we haven't changed it. This has been solid ever since. It's one of those things that just works. I was looking at old Gibsons, and I was going to buy, because I used to have a double neck Gibson, and I was going to buy one, but when I plugged this in and I heard how good it sounds and how easy it is to intonate, night after night after night, it stays in tune, it's crisp, it's clean. You can't get any more bang for your buck than this guitar right here. It's just made by Italia again. I love the people, they're great people, they've been really good to me, and that's why we're designing this bass up here through them. But this is just a great sounding guitar.
Mm-hmm. So now that we've looked at all your basses, let's move over to your amps and effects you have going here. So you run through kind of a pair of amp pegs.
When I was in the Babies, on stage I had a couple SVTs, cabinets and heads. In Styx we don't use cabinets anymore. When I first started with the band 10 years ago, I was using Ampeg bottoms because there's articles and books written about that sound, the design of the 810s moving in one space without any baffling, so it's like an 80-inch speaker or whatever. And people have all these theories. But the closest thing I could get to my old Ampegs are these vintage reissue heads. To me, it just, as soon as I heard it, it resonated, that sound that I remembered. And I just love these heads. They are, to me, the best. Mm-hmm. And we don't, instead of using cabinets nowadays, there's no speaker cabinet that's live on a Styx stage. The only thing that's you'll hear is drums. We're going into Palmer's.
And what was the decision behind taking all the cabinets off stage?
We're trying to make it every night sound like the CDs, like the cleanest mix. If it's dirty, it's because you made it dirty, not because there was ambient feedback or noise or bleed. All of a sudden, we went with the Palmer, and I went in, and the Palmer, it's not really a power soak. How do you explain it, Greg?
It's basically a direct box that loads down your tube amp, because your tube amp needs to see a load like it would from a speaker cabinet, some resistance, so you don't blow up your amp and burn out your transformers. So this actually gives it an 8 ohm load, so we can run it just like we would a speaker cabinet. There's also a through, so you can use it with the speaker cabinet if you would like. Some people still want to have that sound on stage and feel the hair on their arm moving.
Yeah.
But for us, it gives us that studio kind of a quality where everything's isolated. The only thing that's live is the drums and the vocal mics. So our front of house guy has total control. It might not work for everybody, but when you have guys that travel with you, your monitor engineer is consistent, your front of house guy is consistent, you can be pretty sure that you're going to be hearing the same thing every day. Right. You know, between digital consoles and those direct outputs, you're in control. Right. So that's the biggest feature.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Ricky, for walking us through your rig.
you.
Good luck
Yeah.
on the show tonight.
Sweet, thanks.
This is Jason Shadrick with PremierGuitar.com.
Out.